Welcome everyone to the 10th edition of Dealing with Brexit Open Conversations. Before I start, I would like to remind you that captions are available if you need them. My name is Silvia Morelli. I am the Project Communications Manager at Extracts, a Manchester-based development organization for outdoor arts. I am a white woman in my late 30s. I have shoulder-length, wavy brown hair. I wear glasses, and today I'm wearing a light gray jumper. I use the pronouns she, her. As a reminder, our Dealing with Brexit events are designed to offer an informal space to encourage information sharing between peers around touring post-Brexit. This event is supported by Arts Council England as part of Extract's ongoing work to support outdoor art professionals to continue working internationally post-Brexit. You can find more Brexit resources on our website, and my colleague Irene will now put some links in the chat. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Terry James, General Manager at Rocket Global, a freight forwarding and logistic company. Terry works with many British companies during Europe post-Brexit and will share his experience of moving goods and vehicles to Europe. After hearing from Terry, we'll have about 20 minutes for a discussion together about some of the challenges that you might face and the questions that you might have. Again, this session is meant to be informal and to provide a supportive space for anyone with questions around carrying work purpose post-Brexit. We might not have all the answers, but feel free to jump in by raising your hand or popping questions in the chat if you don't feel comfortable coming in. Just a note that any advice given in this space should not be considered legal advice, but more as a starting point for a discussion. And now I will pass it on to Terry.
Thank you very much. Just to go through the stuff that we're going to do, we're going to just pop onto the points today, just to hit different spaces of what elements are involved with the touring in the EU. Don't want to go too much detail to straight away, just in case just to make sure everyone's got the brief and outline of what everything's involved, like the cabotage, carnets, etc. So if you can start my slides, I will go through from the start. And you pop straight onto the next slide, please. Okay, well, the main points to cover on this is just to make sure that everyone understands what cabotage and cross-trade rules are and what the moves actually are themselves. What operators' requirements are required for different vehicles taken into Europe and what you do need licenses for. Quite a lot of people are touring and taking vehicles around without any licenses at all, which has been a bit lax at the moment, but they're starting to reel in on it. So they're starting to pull people in Europe who haven't got the appropriate licenses for things. Processes for ATA carnets. I know some of you guys have already used carnets before. We've raised carnets for you before, and the GMRs and processes involved with that. The weight and size regulations for vehicles, which I know is a question that we was asked, just to specify what the actual the weight and size regulations are for different vehicles, different licenses within the EU and the UK, because there is an operator's license required for the UK now for anything over 2.5 ton. The current pre-notification requirements, which some people may not be aware of, that you need to pre-notify anything coming into the certain places in the EU for now. And finally, rounding up with the general ICS2 rules that are coming in, which means that all ports within Europe, you will need to pre-notify your shipments before you depart for Europe in the future. That's not coming in until next year. So we won't dwell on it, but it is information that you are going to need to keep in mind and act upon within the next 12 months. Next slide. All right, so operator's license for start, whether you've got a van that's your own van, or whether it's you're hiring, or whether it's one that belongs to a company, they all get classed under the same grouping, and it's basically as to whether the weight of your vehicle or your vehicle plus your trailer is over a certain weight, then you will need licenses to be operating in Europe. and whether you're carrying goods for hire and reward. So if you're a haulier taking stuff out for somebody else and you're charging them for that, then regardless of the weights of the vehicles, you will still need an operator's license. There's 3 different types of license, which I'll go through very shortly on the next slide. But obviously you must make sure that any drivers or any vehicles that are under your employ are of the correct licensed and taxed and maintained accordingly. Now, the 3 types of license we've got within the UK, there's a standard national license, which would be anyone with a van over 2.5 ton. So that's like a transporter or a small transit van. So the cutoff is quite low. In order to carry your own goods around the country or other people's goods for commercial purposes, you need a standard national license. Now, I would expect none of this, that will not apply to any of you, because that limits you to within the UK moves. So the next type of license is a standard international license. Now that permits you to do the same things as a standard national license. So you can transfer goods in around the UK. You can also deliver into the EU, or you can pick up from the EU and bring back to the UK on a standard international license. Now, as one of the main points to this talk today is cabotage, I would imagine that a standard international license plus the UK license for the community is what any of you guys are going to need, because that then allows you to do trips between member states in the UK, in the EU, and do cabotage, moving within one country, or cross trades moving from one country to another within the EU. There's still restrictions, which I'll come to in the next couple of slides, as to what you can actually do cabotage and cross-trade trade-wise, even when you have the licenses and everything in position. There's a restricted license available as well, but it's only going to apply to the UK, and it is very restricted on what you can do, and you just keep needing to apply for it. So that's probably not one that's going to be applicable to any of you either. I would be concentrating on the standard international license and the UK license for the community. Can I have the next slide, please? Right. This is if you're a haulier. If you're carrying goods for somebody else, you would still need the standard international license and a UK license for the community. This again allows you to do the cross trades, the cabotage moves and movements into and from the EU legally, basically. Again, as I mentioned before, some people are still moving around without a license. It is applicable even if it's your own van and you're taking your own goods for commercial purposes. The only get around for this is if it's your own van, your own equipment, and you're going out to the EU for non-commercial purposes and coming straight back from where you went to. So you cannot move once you've delivered the goods. They can only be brought directly back again from wherever you've delivered them in the EU. Okay, next slide, please. Here's more details on the weights and cut-offs for the actual vehicles themselves for licenses. I know I'm going a bit too much into the licensing here, but I did think that this is something that wasn't hit on many of the questions, and I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of the license requirements for actually operating the vehicles in the first place before we even get to the cabotage and cross-trade and carnet rules. If you've got your vehicle with an unladen weight of 1,525 or over, which is basically a Volkswagen Transporter or a Ford Transit van style size vehicle, that is going to need a license. And also if you're running the same sort of vehicle with a trailer or even a car with a trailer, you're still going to need a license, unless the very last point on this one is if your trailer is just under 1,020 kilos and you're only carrying your own goods and you're taking it around by car and not another vehicle and not another van, because it would be the accumulated weight of the van and the trailer that would apply to the license. Hopefully I haven't lost anyone at that point. Tried to make this as succinct as possible. So can I have the next slide? Right, so this is to cover goods for hire or rewards, vehicles carrying goods for hire or rewards within Europe. So this again is, even if you're taking stuff out, it's your own stuff, your own van, you're going out for a move. If you're then doing a performance and you're getting paid for that performance, that still classes as for hire and reward, even though the actual payment and the work that you're doing doesn't relate to the move itself. It's all part of the same commercial transaction. So then, even if you're taking a car, as I said earlier, or a trailer that's under the limit weight, you will still need to get the operator's license in place. This also applies for Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. So it is the whole of the area of Europe and not just the EU that these rules apply in. So if you've got anything going out to Norway, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Iceland, the same rules will apply. Although for most of them, you're going to be going through France anyway, which is the bonus. Okay, next slide, please. Right, so to get down to what the actual cabotage and cross trades are, cabotage is loading and unloading goods within one country with a vehicle registered in another country. So basically, for example, you can take a van out to France and deliver in France, say Paris. So if you go to Paris, do a show, you can then load that and take it to another show in France. And then you can then take them goods to another country in the EU, but then you've got to come back. The move within the country is known as cabotage, and a move between two different countries in the EU is known as cross trades. Now, you're allowed to do two cross trades and a cabotage, but you must do the cabotage before the cross trades. Complicated, but you can only move to one European country, then to another, then you've got to return within 7 days, but you can do two moves within the first country that you go to, but then you cannot do that in the second country once you've taken it from one to another. Also, these notes have to be registered with the EU. They've got a posting declaration website, which is shown on here, that posting declaration EU landing. That will take you, you're supposed to go on there and register your carnet numbers, your vehicle numbers, where you're going from and where you're going to for all the cross-trade moves and cabotage moves, but that does not count for the actual initial move. So you move from the UK into the EU, you don't need to declare that. And the move from the EU back to the UK, you don't need to declare that. But if you're moving from 2 points within the EU, be it in the same country, being a cabotage, or if it's from one country to another, being a cross trade, that also needs to be registered on this website. No fee for the website. It's a government run one by the EU, so you can just get on there, register, and put your moves on there. But again, this is something that a lot of people aren't aware of, aren't actually declaring. Again, they've been lenient, but starting to clamp down on these rules now. Can I have the next slide, please? So when you can carry out haulage and cross trades, this is basically what I've just explained. You can carry up to 2 haulage jobs within the EU after dropping the goods off from the UK. Only one of them can be cabotage, and you must do the cabotage job before you do a cross trade job. So again, if you move out to France, you can move it within France once, and then you can move it, say, over to Germany, but then you need to come back, and everything needs to be completed within a 7-day period of you leaving the UK. The cabotage and cross trade rules still need to be followed, even if it's your own vehicle. The only exceptions to this is if you've got an empty trailer going anywhere. So if you've got, say you're going out to France to do a show, you can drop in France, you can then move from France to Germany or somewhere else in France empty, and that doesn't count as one of your moves. That's just an unladen journey. So you can then add to your cabotage and cross trades if you're moving within the EU with an empty vehicle. Same, it doesn't count when you're taking the goods out to the EU, and when you're bringing them back from the EU, or if you're transporting for a non-commercial purpose, but that does mean completely non-commercial. So if you're going out to do a show, that even if you're not paying for the transport, that it all gets rolled into one. So it's a commercial trip if you're being paid for your performance. Okay, next slide, please. Right, this was one that was asked. Is the documents needed for cabotage jobs? Now, the list is there. You need to know where it's coming from, where it's going to, details of the goods, details of the vehicles. But if you use a CMR or a commercial or a consignment note, like a delivery note or a collection note, but an official European one, of which I can send a template to anyone if they need, accompanied along with an ATA carnet, this hits all of these points. So the carnet and the consignment note will be adequate documentation for you to be carrying around, obviously, as well as your license for operating within Europe for your vans. Next slide, please. Declaring the cross-trading cabotage. This is what I was talking about earlier with the website you need to go onto. Lots of people aren't actually complying with this, which is a bit of a concern, but they are tightening down on that. So as long as you guys all know and you can investigate this, we can see where anyone would need to actually implement this. List down there is basically just saying any vehicle. So it's HGVs, anyone towing trailers, cars, vans, they all have to be declared on this system. So whether you're commercial or not, whether you have an operator's license or not, you will still need to declare these moves on the system for the EU's portal. Next slide, please. These are the ones you don't need to declare. Sorry, I've got my notes in the wrong page order here. Just to repeat, you don't need to declare any of these jobs on the system if you're going from the UK into the EU, if you're going from the EU back into the UK, or if you're unladen. They are the only real exceptions to the rule. Next slide, please. Right, this was one of the questions that was asked, and it's the regulations on the driver hours that you can do per week and day in the EU, and the maximum sizes of the vehicles. Now, these size vehicles, I would take the impression from the operations that you guys do that a trailer is not going to be something that most of you would be using out there, but basically a 60-metre trailer would be your limit with 40 tons in it. So I would hope that that limit is way above anything that you guys would be looking to take out. And the driver rules have to be applied to, even if you're a UK operator, you must operate to the EU timings and daily driving allowance, even if you're a UK haulier or your own person if you have your own vehicle. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we was asked for the ATA process. I know some of you use us for ATA carnets before and for your general movement references, but the actual process behind it, once you have your carnet and you've got your crossing details and you know what vehicle you're taking, you need to get hold of someone. Well, you can do it yourself. You can register on the Gov website to do your own GMRs. I would recommend you just get hold of someone like myself, because you find a lot of us are doing it as a free charge at the moment, because we know that this is something that's kind of difficult for smaller artists and man with a van to set up and actually get a GMR system in place. Just takes a few minutes. All we need is the carnet details, your crossing details, and the vehicle details. Ties them all together so that once you've been to the once you've got your GMR, you can go to Customs Inland Border Facility and get your carnet stamped. And then that GMR number shows that you've had a customs clearance done. So when you go to the port, you present your GMR, and then they let you to get onto the boat or the train. So once you get on, you check in once you check into the train or the ferry to get on board, whilst you are crossing, the customs at the other end will determine whether they want to do any inspection on your goods or whether they're just going to stamp you and let you go. And when you come off the other end, they should direct you to customs or direct you on your way. Now, if you've got a carnet, and this was a thing that was happening from the very get-go, sometimes customs will direct you to get on your way when you get off, and they'll say that we don't want to do any checks. This does not mean you don't need to get your carnet stamped. So you do need to go to customs upon arrival in Europe to the first customs border facility and get your carnet stamped into Europe. And then when you're in Europe, that's it, free movement. You can move to any of the countries that you want whilst you're there. Important points to note from experience with carnets recently. The signature box on the front page, which is J, right bottom right hand corner, must match any signatures on authority letters for the carnets, or they get rejected. This is mainly in the UK and France. Also, the authority letters should have the names of anyone who's to use the carnet typed on them and not handwritten. Again, this is I believe it's a misunderstanding of the rules, but they do need the names printed on the forms in the back of the carnet in order for them to accept them, specifically and particularly in the UK. Not so much of an issue in Europe. It's when you're coming back to the UK and the customs border facilities down there. One thing to note, and it is something we'd have another meeting today with the London Chamber of Commerce, in some of the European countries, Spain and Germany being particular ones, if you've got a carnet with no serial numbers on the items, they're asking for a photograph of any items that has no serial number, just so that they can evidence it's the same item leaving the country as arrived. So hopefully that's clear from what I've put there. Any questions on the carnet process or anything, just give me a shout. I can clarify anything. So if we come to the next subject, please. Safety and security declarations. This is what's confusing a lot of people, or what's called ENSs. If you have an ATA carnet, that is your safety and security or ENS declaration going into Europe at the moment. So when you're being asked for an ENS or a safety and security declaration when making a ferry or a train booking, you just need to tell them you're under ATA carnet, and that will comply. And I know this is one thing that's been confusing a lot of people, and they've been trying to find out how to do ENS declarations for carnets, which they'll never find the info because you don't need to do it. It is its own thing. Okay, next slide, please. Now, there was two specific questions in regards to entry into Spain and into Ireland. Even though there's no pre-notification globally or overall for the EU at the moment, Spain, Germany, Belgium and Holland, if you go directly into any of these places, they will require you to do a pre-entry. So you're going to need to enlist the services of a customs broker in the UK. They will do a customs entry. They will forward that customs entry to the country that you're going to arrive into, and then they will give you the okay for you to board your transport, basically. So you won't be allowed to get on a ferry or a train going into Belgium, Holland, or Spain directly, unless you've done a pre-notification. It is complicated. You do need to register on systems, and it is an official customs entry. So I would suggest the use of a broker at the port, or which I can hook anyone up with someone if they need someone at the port. Obviously, the saving grace here is that most people go into France and then go on to these next countries. France does not have any of these pre-notification stuff at the moment, so I would continue to go into France if it was my choice in the matter. You go into France, do your GMR with your carnet, and then you can move around. So there's none of this pre-entry, pre-advice or anything like that. And they're not looking at bringing these rules in for all of the EU until this time next year. They have brought in today the rules on doing air freight. So we now need to pre-notify any air freight moves going into Europe. But they're not doing it for road or ferry movements until March next year, 2024. Okay, next slide, please. Ireland. There was another question about Ireland. They do have a pre-notification system as well, but this one is very, very simple compared to all of the others. And you literally go onto their pre-notification website, you give your ATA carnet number, you give your registration number, and that's it. All done. So you don't need to enlist a broker to do this. There's the link on the screen there. It's the revenue.ae website. Literally go on there, click on create a PBM, put your carnet number in there, your registration number, and you get a barcode and a number back. You present that to your ferry operator and they let you on the boat. Simple as. The only complication with this one is that you've got to do it on the way back as well. You don't need to do anything into the UK, but as you get onto the ferry, you need to do another pre-booking notification in order to proceed on to the ferry. Yeah, and on the way out, customs much the same as France. If you actually do a customs entry, you need to get your carnet stamped on the way in as well. So even if they direct you to go ahead, they don't want to inspect any of your goods, you still need to go to the customs post and get your carnet stamped. Okay, next slide, please. Northern Ireland. Now I'm aware I'm way over time already here, and there's a lot to fit into the Northern Ireland aspect, especially with the new Windsor Protocol presented, which is a red and green channel effect. But this will also be running through the same pre-notification system, but based on where the goods are being picked up from. So where we had a border in the Irish Sea, that border is now being moved back to wherever the goods are being collected from. You just simply need to do a customs entry before you pick the goods up and leave to Northern Ireland, and they'll either tell you to go to the green channel or the red channel. Now, even if you are going into Northern Ireland only and you're under carnet, the chances are you will go to the red channel, because our goods and our sort of industry means that if you're going into Northern Ireland, they declare that as a high risk that you might change your plan, get an extra show, tour might change, and you might need to go into Southern Ireland. So in order for that to be an option, you need to have signed your carnet into the island of Ireland as you go into Belfast. I won't go into too much more detail on this, because obviously it's about a 40-page document that's only been out 2 days. So it's my understanding of how it works at the moment, which I need to clarify with a few people before we go any more official on that. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is what I mentioned before, the ICS2 system, or the Import Control System Mark II for the EU. This is when they bring in all of the rules in 2024 for road and ocean to mean you need to pre-notify into any country. So then the easy option of going in via France to go on to any other country in EU goes away from next March. We will have to do a customs entry exporting from the UK and do your carnets with, as you would normally do with the border posts. Now, this isn't going to require a customs entry inbound into the EU, just going to require a customs entry export from here, because it all gets approved prior to you being allowed to board the ferry or heading out to the EU in the first place. Yeah, freight that's brought this in. Ocean freight and road freight is next year. So hopefully, if Sylvia will have me back, I'll give you a bit of an update, either later in this year or early next year. I think all that we've got left now is my resources links. Now, rule of thumb is that the gov.uk website is your friend. It has the up-to-date information on all the time. So if you just check your operator's license, not so much, but your cabotage and your cross-trade rules, they are forever changing. This is a complete evolving beast. So it will be worth checking in on the gov.uk website on these rules on a regular basis, or at least check in with a forwarder or a customs broker just to see if there's any changes. Generally, I would suggest, once you've got a plan and you've got the moves that you're planning, even if you're not planning on enlisting the services of a customs agent or a freight forwarder, just give one a call and ask. Most of us, I will do the same. If you call me, I'll happily answer any questions, give you the how to do it, no charge. And if you're not going to use my services to do so, that's no problem. We're all here to help each other get through this, the Brexit minefield and the ever-changing beast that it is at the moment. Also on there, as I noted, some people asked about the visas and work permits, is a link to people that we work with, Blair Consular. They do consular services, passport services, visa services, and work permit investigations for bands and orchestras that we work with. We don't get involved with that ourselves, but that they are the people that we would use or recommend people to use to get the information required. Also on the links there is you've got the inland border facility. Case studies.
Oh, Terry, you froze for a second. You were saying something about the inland border facilities, I think. Are you there?
Hello?
Okay, you're back. Yes.
I'm back. When did I freeze?
Yes.
Don't tell me 4 slides
facilities.
ago. Okay, so the inland border facilities link allows you to go on and find all of the offices where you can go and get a carnet stamped, either exiting or returning back into the UK. So you don't have to go, you don't need to go to somewhere down the south coast all the time. A lot of people believe that the ports are only, or the offices are only down the south coast. They are all over the country. There's some in Liverpool, there's some in Scotland. So there are different places you can get your carnet stamped, both in and out of the UK. And the last one, I don't know if, did you hear me saying about the Brexit team? No, okay, that's just a resource, general crowdsourced resource again, which has got lots of useful information on different Brexit things that are coming up, regulations that are in place. So if you want to just double check anything that you're seeing on the Gov website, it's a good place to go and have a look for things that are written in more plain English and by other people who are doing what you're doing, and that's actually actively taking your own stuff out and not just enlisting the services of a haulier that could take it out. Now, having said all of this, that is also another option. There are companies that are set up here and in the EU to get around cabotage rules, because if you've registered here and in the EU and have a fleet both here and in the EU, you're outside the rules of cabotage. There's a proviso allowing both sets of vehicles to be used for an entire tour. So that takes away the 7-day limits, the cabotage limits, the cross-trade limits, etc. But it's a massive undertaking to do that. So it's not something I would suggest anyone tries to do themselves unless they've got unlimited funds. These are big trucking companies and touring truck companies who are dealing with the big tours that have had to do this, because otherwise there's just simply no other way of getting around it. There's not enough touring trucks in the EU. They're all based in the UK, and it's another thing that wasn't thought of before Brexit, unfortunately. So yeah, that rounds up everything I've got on my current presentation. Happy to take any questions or clarify anything I've said so far.
Thank you so much, Terry. There was so much information in here, lots of technical bits as well. So I could see some people a bit taken away by all this. It's a lot to digest, but we're going to share the presentation with all the links after this session, so you can read it through at your own pace and explore some of the links. And if you have any further questions, then you can get back to us afterwards as well. I can see that Ivan's got his hand up, so if you want to go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. That was amazing. I just went through in January and with a carnet, and the GMR thing came up, and I didn't realize that cabotage was applied to just vans. I thought it was for larger vehicles. I had no idea. They put me on a normal, if you like, passenger route. And it was quite difficult once I got into France, Calais, to find the officers in France to get the carnet stamped. It was actually really difficult. It's not published anywhere. So after finding that and going in there, there's 2 different offices is it one office for when you go in? There's a different office at the ferry terminal when you go when you come back.
Yeah, there's 2 offices. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't like to make things easy, that end.
Yeah. So yeah, that was, but it only took 10 minutes. They were only really interested in stamping that and letting you go. But the pre-notification I wasn't aware of either going into the EU. I definitely was aware of that for UK, but not EU. So I was just quite surprised about the cabotage. So that does apply to small vans.
Yes, and everything that's over 2.5 tons, basically. So there's a rule of thumb. We say anything larger than a VW transporter is going to be subject to this.
Okay, great. And just in terms of documentation, so anything that doesn't have a serial number now that's on your list of things, it's worthwhile having photo documentation of all of that.
I would strongly, at this point, I would strongly make sure that everyone gets photos of everything until I can clarify. I've got the London Chamber of Commerce due here this afternoon to discuss this, because it's not something that's in the ATA carnet chain rules. It's just something that Spain started coming up with, and then Germany have started coming up with. I mean, I can understand, because obviously if you're using a carnet, you're supposed to only use stuff that has serial numbers or can be evidenced to see that it's exactly the same stuff going in that's coming out again. But the requirement of photos of this could be difficult, especially for some of my customers. We're raising carnets before the equipment's finished being made sometimes, so it's impossible to get photographs at the point at which we're raising carnets. So I need to clarify this with the chamber this afternoon. So I'll let Sylvie know what we find out about that. But I would recommend that anyone doing a carnet at the moment, if you've got anything without serial numbers, just get a quick snap, even if it's just on your phone, so that you can provide it to someone at customs, should you be asked. Again, if you're going in via France, I haven't heard of anyone being asked that yet.
So just two quick things. So in terms of the named people on the carnet, so is it okay to get a second authorization letter to say that the driver, if you like, is, or does that driver have to be named on the carnet?
Two ways of doing it. They can be named on the front of the carnet if you know who's doing it at the time you're raising the carnet, or you can do what's called an authority letter, which is on the back, an extra letter in the back of the carnet. We provide it with all of ours, so I can send you a template for it if you'd like. But as long as that letter is signed by the same person who signed the front of the carnet, you can then authorize other people to use the carnet. But that needs to be printed, which I still think is a misunderstanding, because you can print something with a pen, but the people down at customs are insisting that printing means it's been run through a physical machine that's printed a name onto that piece of paper. So another thing I need to clarify.
And also have copies.
Yes, you need to be able to provide them copies to keep.
Yeah. And just one last thing. So if you take in a modified list of things on your carnet, so if you don't take everything that's listed on your carnet, have you any experience of that? Yeah,
you can do exclusions on the carnet. We do that every day. That's absolutely fine. You can't add to a carnet, but obviously you can take it away. So you can get a carnet listed with everything you own that's valid for the year, and then just literally say it's only these items we're taking this time, it's only these items we're taking this time, and that's totally acceptable. The only thing you can't do is add anything that's not on that list to start with.
Because I just tried to do that, and they didn't really want to know about it, and they sort of ignored.
Okay, anyway. They're not supposed to.
Because I had 300 items, and they wanted me to go through every single item, and they couldn't really actually. Anyway, I was just curious about that. But yeah,
no, that's cool. Acceptable.
Okay,
hey Sean.
Thank you.
Right, Terry, thanks for that. I must admit my head began to freeze halfway through.
I was trying not to put too much into that.
Not over to you, mate. It's just the regulations. So I just wanted to sort of clarify a journey that we're about to make, and just get everything that we're going to need. So we've got a van with some unusual sort of circus gear in it. I've got a carnet for all that gear. Must admit I haven't got photographs of everything, but I'll think about that. So as we arrive in France, we're going to need an operator's license. It's a transit van. Is that right?
You should need you should really have an operator's license in the UK as well to operate the transit van if you're doing it.
And just briefly, how do we go about getting an operator's license? What's the quickest way of doing that?
It's just applied from the DVLA. There's links on the government website. Did I add that?
No, that's cool. No, but that's a DVLA thing.
It's fine. A DVLA thing, but also on the gov.gov website, it does help give you a guidance on what you would need. But if you're going out, you're going to need the simplified international license plus the UK international. Let me get this wording right so that you get it exactly right. because it's the standard international license and a UK license for the community, which did used to just be covered. As long as if you had a UK license, obviously being part of the EU, that automatically gave you the UK license for the rest of the community. But now you need to get the standard international license. You can then apply for the UK license for the community, but it's part of the same thing. So there's no extra costs. There's no extra hoops to jump. It's just they bolt that on.
Yeah,
but you do need to apply for the standard license.
I get it. So I go to .gov. They'll probably take me maybe to the DVLA, and that's where I do the business on that. Brilliant. Yes. And then when just remind me what the GMR number was.
As the general movement reference, that's what ties. It's basically a computer system to tie the vehicle registration with your customs documents. So in your case, it'd be a carnet. So I would go onto the system, put your vehicle reg in, put your 88 carnet reg in, and then put the crossing you're going to take. That then generates a barcode and a number, so that when you go down to the port, you just hand in the GMR. They scan that, and then the computer can see you've been to customs, you've done your carnet. Your vehicle's already been pre-registered, and they can see what crossing you're going to be taking.
So again, that's on .gov and tap in GMR number.
It's not as easy to do that. You need to have a government gateway account, and you need to actually apply to be able to do GMRs. That's why several companies like myself, we've registered ourselves to do GMRs, so we can be of assistance for people. So if it's something that you get roadblocked with there, Sean, give me a shout. I can easily raise your GMR, no cost. I can do that.
What is your company, Terry? Remind me, sorry.
Rocket Global. This is not a sales pitch. I'm just offering. This is our assistance. We're offering across the board, everyone from the London Symphony Orchestra right down to the two-man circus acts. We would do this for nothing at the moment, just until everyone can get into the process. There's so much involved, and as you can see, and so many rules, that somebody needs to help our industry. So that's where we've positioned ourselves at the moment, is to help everyone along.
Okay, so with the carnet, an operator's license, and the GMR number, we should be called to get out to France and move around.
Good. Yeah, you're good to go. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Terry. Much appreciated.
No,
Terry, sorry, does that mean that you need to book a freight? You need to book on as freight when you're going through the Eurotunnel or with the GMR number? Yeah.
Yes, because as you are alluding to there, if you book on as a passenger, you bypass all of the customs systems, and then you'll get stopped as you're going into the EU, because there is no. If you book on as a passenger, they won't let you process a GMR, which won't activate your ATA carnet export. So when you get the other end, unless you just up and just go, which is not advised and not legal, you need to present your carnet, and at that point they're going to say, well, where's the GMR export from the UK? You've come across as a passenger and not as commercial. So it's still possible to do, but you need to literally go to an inland border facility here, explain to them you're not commercial, you have no GMR. It would take a while to find someone to know what you're trying to do, and the same again when you get into France. So for the sake of just booking it and just saying this is freight, I'm not a passenger, and getting a GMR, it makes everything, the whole process, just smooth and happen. Okay.
I had a question, Terry. Just on the kind of number of stops that you can do when you are in the EU, and you mentioned the whole kind of cabotage and cross trades, which you have to do. So basically, you can do 3 stops, but the first 2 have to be in the same country, and then you have to go back. Is that right? Yeah,
if you want to do 3. The first 2 have to be in the first country, or you'll get limited to 2. So if you go straight on and do a cross trade, say you deliver to Paris, and then you go straight on to Berlin, that's your limit then, and then you have to come back within 7 days.
And when we're talking about stops, what constitutes a stop? So, for example, if unloading.
Okay. You can stop anywhere. You can keep moving everywhere until you've unloaded. The second you've unloaded, you've completed the trip.
Got you.
Yeah.
Great. That's useful to know. Thanks.
Can I ask a question leading on from the cabotage and carnet, the cabotage rules and cross trade rules? Were you suggesting then that applies to anybody that's making a commercial trip?
Yes.
So even like an individual artist who's carrying exhibition work for an exhibit in France or something, they would need to. Well, I guess they don't even be making more stops, but anybody has to apply by those rules. I was just thinking about, wasn't there an agreement about splitter vans that maybe fell outside of those rules? And so I was just wondering if there were any exemptions.
There was. Splitter buses were given their own entity, but now they are being rolled into the commercial vehicles sector. So now it's just done on weight. Where because splitter buses, the fortunate thing is that they were called splitter buses, and the bus rules were different to the truck rules. So they were able to slot the splitter buses in with people carrying vehicles. But now the people carrying vehicles, if they've got goods on, come under the same rules as the commercial vehicles. The only thing you have got there in that scenario, if that artist is in their own car, it's their own artwork.
Okay. Oh, he's frozen.
Themselves that they're transporting out. You can move with your own equipment under your own steam to take the stuff out, as long as it's not for commercial benefit.
Okay.
Does that help?
But it does help, but I suppose I mean it doesn't include cabotage, but say a visual artist going to an exhibition in France with a carnet, I guess then they just need to follow the carnet rules and not the cabotage.
Yes. Yeah, so as soon as you got the carnet, then you're in. But cabotage is it's a secondary thing to the carnet, so you still can only do. You're still restricted by cabotage, even if you've got a carnet to allow you to go all around Europe. Once you're in that commercial situation, you can only do the two moves or the three, including the cabotage / the cross trade.
And so, like you were saying, if it's his own work and his own car, then you are not limited. Then you are not bound to the cabotage rules. But
what I would do in that, and you're not
thing. You know, I mean, like an exhibition, could it be counted as a commercial?
It could be, but at that point in time, because what you do is you take yourself out of both the cabotage, the cross trades, and the carnet. I would recommend you don't get a carnet for that sort of move, because that then is denoting it as a commercial move. So if you're going in your own car with your own goods under your own steam to say your own event in Paris, you're allowed to go and do that. And then because you're then not with a carnet and you're not under cabotage or anything, you can just keep moving around the EU and then come back. So there is a little bit of a loophole there with your personal goods, and that there is a proviso. I don't know if it counts for any of you guys, but it's proviso for personal musical equipment as well.
Yeah.
The same rules apply. So small bands of like 2 or 3 people, providing that all the equipment is owned by themselves and they haven't hired anything, and they're going out for promotional shows and they're not getting paid, they don't need a carnet and they don't need to follow cabotage and cross-trade rules there either. It was specifically added afterwards when it was realised that the EU-UK trade agreement has just blocked an entire sector of small bands being able to do their business in Europe as they have been. There was just no way of doing it. They had to put a proviso in there to allow it to be done. But that does mean everything has to belong to them artists, and you need to be at a list and show it belongs to all the people. The second you've got one hired bit of equipment, you need a carnet.
Thanks.
I was going to ask actually about promotional events, because we do find that in the outdoor art sector there are some kind of marketplace events that are international where the artists aren't necessarily paid to perform there, but they tend to be their accommodation and meals tend to be covered. So does that count as commercial activity where there isn't an exchange?
No, you can get per diems and stuff like that, and that's not part of the being commercial. But if they've actually paid to be doing the show, then it becomes commercial.
So if a company that has a set is traveling to the EU for a promotional festival that they're not going to be paid for, do they still need to have a carnet and notify this?
Yes, that's a company. The rules will only apply for personal goods. So
Right.
if it's a person on their own that owns the goods, as soon as it's a company that owns anything, that all full commercial documents are required. So Carne,
Right. So if it's
cabotage
an
and cross
independent
trade come into
artist
play.
traveling with one bit of puppetry, for example, that is made by them, owned by them, then the advice would be not to get a Carne if it's something that they can justify it is theirs.
Yeah, provided they're
Yeah.
not being paid and there's no commercial benefit, and then it's all their own equipment, and then yes, just carry documents to say this belongs to me, and
Okay.
photos if you can, and that is currently allowed under the EU-UK trade agreement.
Okay. But if they are a company, if they are registered as a company, even if the artwork belongs to them,
the second you're a
Carne.
company, the provisos are no longer applicable.
Got you. Thank you. That's really helpful. I feel like we're all taking deep breaths, aren't we?
I know. I
No,
didn't want to be scaring
useful,
people with
Terry.
lots of extra information,
No,
but there are things
Thank
that
you
need
so
to be
much,
aware of.
honestly. Oh, no, it's brilliant. It's just a lot to take in, isn't it?
Hey Terry, sorry, Mr. Miguel. That's really interesting on the splitter van thing. I think everyone was under the impression that with splitter vans there's a slight different type of rules for us. So I'm
There
really
was up
surprised about
until this year. So yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for clarifying that. That's really helpful.
We're almost at the end of this session, so we are going to wrap up. Of course, there's going to be more questions, I think, coming up once you think about it and think about your future plans. So please feel free to contact us and we'll do our best to answer them. Thanks everyone for attending this session. We hope you find it fruitful. And thank you so much, Terry, for sharing your experience with us today.
More than welcome.
Details on further Brexit advice session will be published in due course on our website and communications, but please note that there will be a little break as we need to fundraise for our next international project. Please continue to share your experiences of touring post-Brexit with us and refer to our website for further Brexit resources. Just before you close your Zoom, please answer our short survey on this session. It only takes a couple of minutes and it's very, very easy for us to gather feedback. Thank you once again, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Take care.